From the G-Clef classroom to the Sprechensong syllabus, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Jason Burns.
And I am Danny Nucci, the Sprechensong man. And this is the What About podcast. We are happy to see you here. Yeah, Jason. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Danny, I had a dream about you last night. I figured I'd start there.
Did you?
I did. It's an odd one.
Was I thinner in the dream?
I don't remember us. So we were interviewing Monica Bellucci.
Sure.
There was some existing thing between you two that made it very uncomfortable for the interview. It went terribly.
Will you tell the listeners who Monica Bellucci is, please?
She's an amazing actress, and she's been in all sorts of stuff over the years. Spectra, the 007 movie, is probably the one that most people recognize. But she's also in the next Beetlejuice sequel, which I find amazing that they called it Beetlejuice, because if people who know how to summon Beetlejuice. But after the interview, it went so bad. But we went back to our career, which was everybody in the world worked for this one factory getting the same resource. And that's where everybody worked. And I thought it was amazing that even in this dystopian world, we still had the podcast.
That's interesting. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we must have more than 3 listeners.
Maybe we're the only podcast in the future. I doubt it.
That would be sad if we were the only one.
Know.
That would be sad.
Well, we have a fantastic episode today, and I think that goes for anybody who loves music and Five for Fighting. John Ondrasik.
How about John Ondrasik? Was he just a treat to talk to? For those of you that don't know Five for Fighting, Superman was a song that was very impactful during 9/11, and then the very popular 100 Years, which I think everybody knows. Once that first, the first opening bars of that song come on, everybody knows which song that is.
I've heard it played at many weddings, many weddings.
Yeah. The ultra talented and extremely conscientious John Ondrasik.
Fun fact, John, you and Danny both grew up in the Valley.
Yeah, I went to Grant High School in Van Nuys.
Yeah, I was at Kennedy in Granada Hills up there.
I know Kennedy, sure.
What year did you graduate?
86.
86, yes. Yeah, so we're pretty, we're in the same ballpark. We both missed John Elway at Granada, but...
Yeah, but our school won the city championship at Dodger Stadium against Granada Hills, not Kennedy, but against Granada Hills High.
Really? Did you play?
No. I'm an excellent athlete from the neck up, and that's about it.
Yeah, aren't we all? That's awesome.
Your mom was a teacher in the Valley too, John, right? Did she teach in high school?
No, she was actually a piano teacher, just kind of giving piano lessons to folks around town. But when LA Unified cut funding in elementary school, she came in and started putting on full musicals for the kids. And they're still 50 years later, all those kids, still reach out to her. It was a very, I think, moving experience. And a lot of those folks kind of went into music or used it in their lives. So yeah, she's a USC, piano major, music major. So that's where the music genes come from.
So what is your earliest memory, John, of being at the computer and feeling it was your future? Not like, just, hey, I'm gonna see how this goes, but knowing that this was the calling.
Being at your computer, you said. Is that what you intended to say?
Is that what I said? No. Piano.
My computer piano. Yeah, it's I always love music. I think what happened, my mom was very wise. She gave me the basics, the fundamentals of piano as a kid. And then when I was 13 and I wanted to quit, I didn't want to practice. I wanted to ride my skateboard, chase girls. She said, okay, let me quit. She let me quit. And so then it was up to me. Do I like this? Do I want to do this? And, I loved, Billy Joel and Elton John and Queen and like everybody else back then. And I just started writing songs, and it was a passion from a very young age. Started taking voice lessons from Steve Perry's voice teacher at 17.
Well, you can't beat that. I mean, good Lord.
Who was Steve Perry's voice teacher?
His name was Ron Anderson, and it was so funny. He was like the voice teacher to the rock stars. Like, I'd be this little kid and show up, and then, you know, Axl Rose would be coming through, and Don Dawkins, and so of course, you know, you feel like you're in the right place, and you train operatically. So we all trained operatically. I sang opera till I was in my mid-20s. Actually, there was a minute there that I could have gone that way, but you know, again, I was listening to Zeppelin, not Pavarotti. Um, but yeah, so we all trained classically, and I think if you listen to, like, you know, the real elite singers, the Freddie Mercurys of the world, you know, they tend to have that classical training. But yeah, it was pretty wild, you know, seeing those guys come through,
Now, let me ask you this, because this is, at a time where, piano music among the peers was not the most, cool thing. So how did you work that out? Because you're right at that age where, everybody else is putting a band together and playing guitars and drums and bass. And you're like, I can play piano.
Very intuitive question. Actually, out of college, in this weird circumstance, I met a guy named Rudy Sarzo. He was the bass player for Ozzy, Quiet Riot, Whitesnake, and for some reason he took me under his wing, and he introduced me to a friend of his named Scott Sheets, who was Pat Benatar's guitar player. And so I was 22. These guys were all out of, in their early 40s. And to your point, they were doing the kind of pop rock stuff. And so I ended up joining a band with Scott Sheets and all the ex-members of Pat Benatar's band. I was 23, they were 40, and we were chasing Bon Jovi, and we had this manager, and we were about to get a record deal. And the songs were good, but they weren't my, piano songs, but I didn't care.
Were you playing piano in that band, John?
No, I was just singing. I mean, I'd play a little piano. I'd write on the piano, but I was the singer.
Were you the lead singer of the band?
I was the lead singer of the band. Yeah. Insane. Me with all these dudes,
It's not insane at all. You put the pretty kid right in front, and everybody else plays music. It's great.
Or they were damn desperate.
No, I mean, your voice, I'm sure it was incredible then. So while you're doing this, you're actually secretly, without a band, without a thing, without a thing. Listen to me.
Yeah.
Articulate. Without any kind of formal outlet, you were writing songs for you, basically. Did you think, maybe I'll do something with this? Maybe I'll get publishing? I mean, you're obviously now understanding a little bit more about the music business, being around these professionals. How did that all sit in you? And what were you thinking at that time?
Totally. I mean, I was always chasing, trying to play at gigs, writing hundreds of songs, talking to publishers. And the interesting thing, how the John Scott project collapsed, was this little band called Nirvana came out.
Heard of them.
Changed everything. Yeah.
And literally overnight, all the rock bands were over. Nobody was signing them. They were dead. And for me, that was a blessing, because I did go back to the piano, and I started basically writing, my piano songs. But again, to your point, in the late 90s, when I had my first record deal, the label came to me and said, what you said, the male piano player is dead. It does not exist. This is not 1976. This is Lilith Fair. This is boy bands. This is grunge, and you need a band name. And so here, I'm a little perturbed after I'd spent a year making a record, and they said, you need a band name. And I'd just been to an LA Kings hockey game. I'm a big hockey fan. And a guy named Marty McSorley, who was Wayne Gretzky's bodyguard, dropped the gloves a couple times, got 5 for Fighting. So I sarcastically said to the label, well, how about 5 for Fighting, expecting them to hate it. And they're like, we love it. And I'm like, you guys are insane. It sounds like I should be opening for Metallica, but here we go.
Interesting.
And that's the launch pad of 5 for Fighting.
They were interested in your music, but wanted to repackage the exterior.
Yeah, it was a marketing ploy, and you understand why.
Yeah.
But I also think it cost them probably 1 million sales, because the difference between people who know the songs and the people that think there's a band 5 for Fighting, but there's no band, there's this guy John. It's a disconnect. So for me, it was great about the music, and I always get a ticket to a hockey game, whatever town I'm in, and I played Dodger Stadium like you did, your school did, for your football championship. I played the Kings outdoor game with the Ducks, and John Ondrasik doesn't play that. Fight for Fighting does.
Mhm.
So there's been some perks along the way. But yeah, it was a struggle. When Superman came out, nobody wanted to play it. Radio, didn't want to play it. It took a very long time to kind of to test, to research. But I think because it was different and because it was the piano, when it did kind of hit that tipping point, it became that song. And then you did start to see piano come back on the radio.
Yeah.
Ben Folds,
Sure.
other artists bring piano back on the radio, which is great.
It was your music that helped that turn happen. I mean, it made probably the people in the industry, not so much listeners, comfortable to take a shot on a piano player.
Of course, they all started chasing it. All of a sudden, it's like, where's your piano ballad? Where's your piano ballad? And they started signing songwriters that played piano, and you did see the piano start to creep back in on the radio. But that's the blessing of having a song that's not just kind of complete in the modern zeitgeist.
Sure.
It's something that if it does go, then it has a different tone. And I think one reason why it kind of stood the test of time, of course, 9/11, and that made Superman something nobody could imagine. But yeah, it's the stars did certainly align for me when it comes to timing there.
When you were making the record and you had the A&R coming in and listen to it and going, okay, what kind of notes were you getting? Because it was a bit of an outlier. I mean, that record is a bit of an outlier at that time. What
and
were
we
you
should
getting?
point out too that labels were still a big deal then, right? That this was still like,
yeah, Columbia Records, big deal. The good news was Columbia Records didn't even know I was on their label. I was on a little label called Aware Music, started by this kid, Greg Latterman, who was putting out compilations in college in Chicago. And he would always have like the next thing. He'd have Matchbox 20 before they became Matchbox 20. He would have Train. He would have Hootie. And Columbia Records like, this kid knows something. So here's a little label. So I signed through Aware Records. And when they found out that, oh, there's this guy, he has a record, it wasn't Superman they chose. It was a song called Easy Tonight, which was the only song of mine written on guitar that went to radio. And that song became a #1 AAA song, which is cool, but it sells no records.
You wrote it on guitar, but played it on piano? Was it in the...
No, it's a guitar song. Yeah, I wrote it on guitar. It's a guitar song. There's a little piano in it, but it's an acoustic kind of singer-songwriter rock song. And it did, as I said, it did well. And so Columbia's like, okay, this guy didn't sell any records, but he had this hit. And they said, all right, you can have one song before you have to get a real job. And I'd seen Superman react. I'd seen people react to it.
Live?
Yes.
So you're basically playing, small clubs or venues, and you get into that one, you start that one, about halfway through, you're going, oh my God, they're listening. They've stopped what they're doing and they're listening. You're
exactly right. When you're a new writer, nobody knows who you are, your songs, you're used to just playing through, people, talking and, the bars clinking and the blenders and you could see people react to that. And also we'd send it out to a few films and licensing people, and people would respond. And so I kind of said, in my heart, if I'm going to go down in flames, I don't want to be thinking what could have happened. Right. So, and also the publishing company, EMI Publishing, which was really important for me, they believed in the song and they were willing to put their weight behind it. And so, so we took it. And as I said, it struggled for a long, long time. But once, some of the stations there was one station in Las Vegas who was not going to let that song, die. And she kept playing. Her name was Charisse, and she kept playing it. And then,
isn't that amazing? One person, the entire, is that incredible? I mean, you wouldn't think of it, especially at that time where, I think you were still at the tail end of the heyday of the music business. And
yes,
I mean, heyday, that means everybody had an imprint label. So if you could find one hit, you had a label. They were throwing record deals out like hotcakes. Everybody was making money on CDs. It was the height. And so the fact that you had one person who was championing the song in Vegas consistently.
It probably helped that it was Vegas, because a lot of people come in and out of that city. So they probably came in, they heard the song, they went back home, and they tried to hunt it out.
Well, you're right. I caught the last wave of the music business. It really was. And, this program director, was someone I'd done a lot of events for. And this was also a time in the radio business where there was a little more autonomy, that radio programmers could take a shot. It wasn't like now where you have Clear Channel, 2 or 3 places and one guy programs the whole country. So people could take chances. And so, it's a good, I do these keynotes and I talk about the power of relationships. Superman is what it is, not because of my talent, not even because of my work ethic, not even because of my perseverance. It's because of one relationship with this woman in Vegas. And when she hit 1,200 spins and it became top 5 on a radio station, she had a big voice and started calling all her friends in the music industry and the radio business. And they trusted her because she was a leader. But isn't that crazy, Danny? That's how tenuous this business is.
The fact that it caught fire the way it did, I 100% agree with you. But it had to strike a chord with her, and it had to be a good song.
Yes.
And
it took. At the end of the day, it's
and it took all. It took. I don't know how many songs you wrote, but you get one for one out of every 18, right? Like one out of every 22.
Try one out of 1,000.
Okay,
and I'm not exaggerating.
Right, so you get one out of 1,000. That's a lot of. I don't know if this is good. Let me write the next one. I mean, that's a lot, and especially when there's no money coming in, you're like, what am I doing with my life? Right? You have breakfast, right? You've done what you need to do, and then it's like you're sitting at the piano going, I'm doing what? Is this what?
I had success very late. I was in my late 20s, which is kind of unheard of, because as you said, people have to get a job. You have to kind of support yourself. I was very blessed that we have a family business in commerce that I could work at, during times that, that I was available and still pursue my music. And if it wasn't for my parents kind of supporting me in that outlet, I would not have just had the bandwidth to continue, grinding and writing more songs and working with producers and networking and all the stuff you need to do to have success. So yeah, that was a huge blessing for me.
It's not surprising to me that you speak about this because, most, I think everyone, all the kids, they want immediate gratification, including being able to, churn out hits, so to speak.
Yeah.
And, you're a wonderful example of the hits came out of just doing what you're doing and continuing to do it and not judging it too much and getting it done. And then one of them struck and here we are. Point being that, you're just a wonderful example of someone that's persevered and done it in a way that, it took hard work and discipline and consistency. I mean, that's the hardest thing. And I really appreciate, your gratitude for the opportunity that you had to write all the time, which is essentially what I've heard you say. And that's great. But nonetheless, that, the self-doubt and the voices that you have to battle to just continue to be creative is no joke. I mean, it's just, and you don't know it until you do it.
No, you're right. I mean, look, you're a creator, you're an artist, and so much of it is just perseverance, right? Just having the spine to keep going and deal with all the rejection, and having that will. So much in life is just will. Do you have the will to do it? And that doesn't guarantee anything. You could be Leonard Cohen and you could never make a penny in the music business. That's the way the arts are. But, my daughter's 22, just graduated from school and is pursuing the arts. And you're right. They're like, oh my God, I'm 23. I don't have 10 million followers. My life is over. It's like that, this desire for instant, kind of success and gratification. I think it also exemplifies the arts that we see, the music business. How many songs that we hear now are we going to hear 20 years from now? I don't know if it's as many as we would have heard before.
I don't know. Well, John, to that point, if you turn on rock radio now, it's the same songs that were playing when Superman came out. Like that, there is no new music in terms of rock radio. Pop still has its thing, but the songs that are going to stand the test of time are the ones that are already doing that, I think.
Well, of course, look, Breakfast with the Beatles, Get the Lead Out, the great songs are the great songs. And I do think, look, the internet's been great because anybody can have an audience and anybody can hear you. When I wrote Superman, It's Not Easy to Be Me, it's exactly what you were talking about. I was hitting the wall. I just wanted to be heard. Give me a chance. If you think I suck, fine, but let me play in the sandbox. So at least today people can find that audience, but it's also so generic. You have 8 people writing one song. You have the same 7 producers playing 90%, producing 90% of the songs. So you don't have, I think, a lot of artistry on the radio. And part of that too is the consolidation of radio. You don't have as many stations, playing, the new singer-songwriters who haven't sold a ton of records, but they are like the David Grays of the world.
But it does seem like that singer-songwriter, which I think most people are just calling Americana now, is having a bit of a golden age. It feels like the artist is having a chance to shine as opposed to, the metal, the rock, the grunt, whatever it is. It's just like a person in a guitar or a person in a piano.
Well, yeah, no, I think you have seen that in the last 10 years, and it's a different process now. You don't have to have a record label to have success. You can build your audience, and you may not sell millions of records, but you can go sell a show for 400 or 500 people. And that's what I tell kids. Look, I wish every songwriter in the world could have a hit song that everybody knows. But what I really wish for people who want to do this is, when you're an old guy like me, and you're in your 50s, that if you want to do a show, somebody buys a ticket, which means you've had a career. And you don't have to do it all through radio. Dave Matthews never had a huge radio career, and he sells 50,000 tickets everywhere he goes. So there's different ways to do it. But yeah, it has been nice, to listen to the coffee shop, Sirius channel, and you hear all these people who can play an instrument. They don't have to use auto tune all the time. And, they're actually writing songs.
What about music education?
Well, John, one of the topics that we're excited to talk about with you is music education. I know that's really near and dear to your heart. To start, I'm curious, how important is that subject in your life, given the fact that your mother was a piano teacher and an educator? Is that part of the seeds for that foundation?
Yeah, you called it. That drove it. I've worked with a family in Chicago called the Tallman family, who do amazing work in the city and around the world. And the daughter, Kaylee, is a good friend of mine, and they've been in Chicago inner city schools for a long time. And about a year and a half ago, we were talking about what can we do? What can we do besides, raising some money, getting instruments, which is important, but something different. And because of my mom, coming into to Van Gogh Elementary, when we lost our music teacher, I said, let's write a song with some kids in a school that doesn't have a music teacher, and let's raise funds to get them one. And we did. There was 8 students. None of them are musicians. They're very shy. They couldn't play an instrument, but we spent 6 weeks writing a song. I came up with a chorus called Let Music Fill My World, and they wrote every lyric. All of it's them. We went to a studio and we recorded it, and they were on cloud 9, and we mixed it, made a video. And we did. We raised this money for 3 years for their school, for a music teacher, for a salary of $250,000. So it was great.
I want to jump in. I love that story. But I just, how old were these kids?
They were high school kids. So, they were 16, 17, 18.
Great. So they're sitting in the studio for the first time hearing playback. I mean, can you just tell me what your experience of I mean, you're watching these kids who have written this song for the first time. They're getting it, with that honest monitor coming at them. Can you just talk a little bit about what that felt for you? Because I can't, after the work on doing it, especially with the purpose of, opening this world up to them, watching them hear themselves and hear the song for the first time. What was that like?
If the 3 of us kind of woke up in a spacesuit on Mars and opened our eyes, that would probably be closest to their kind of their experience there. They were wide-eyed, they were nervous, they were excited. The microphones, the guy at the mixing board, and listening to it afterwards, it gives me chills. It's just such an excitement and an experience. none of them ever could have imagined in their life.
Well, and they probably had to get comfortable with each other too, because here they are in front of their peers, which as a teenager, you're all nervous as hell. And then to be able to just to find their comfort zone amongst themselves was probably super important.
Oh, totally. I mean, you could, I'll send you guys the video. You can watch, and I went into the vocal booth with each one of them and kind of
Mhm.
hold their hand, and because it's scary. Oh my God! And the people are all listening. It'd be a lot easier if their fellow students weren't listening to every
Mhm.
note they did. But it wasn't about being great singers. It was just about doing this song. And so what me and Kaylee decided to do was, let's take it national. Let's take this quest national. 4 million kids in America do not have a music teacher. I had a contest years ago to my song, What Kind of World Do You Want, where we raised money and people made videos. People like to make
Mhm.
videos. They like to, make content. And so we're launching this kind of Music Matter challenge, which is kind of like an ice bucket challenge for music. And what it is it's a month-long competition that starts March 26th. We'll debut on Good Morning America 3. And all people have to do if they want to support us is make a little video on their phone of a story about a music teacher or somebody that made a difference in their lives. I know both of you probably have somebody like that.
John, I can still remember the song about itching that I was taught in like the first grade. It'll pop into my head when I'm in the shower and I'll start singing There's a Scratching on My Back over and over again, because it takes you out of like the math and the science, which is all great, but it gives you a break during the day.
Well, there you go. You already have you have the first half done. So people will tell an anecdote like that, and then they'll sing a little bit of the song, Let Music Fill My World, or they can play it on an instrument, or they can rap to it. And then they enter our contest on the website, letmusicfillmyworld.com. And we have two prizes. The winner of the individual prize will sit with me and Kaylee. And again, we'll find another school in need, probably in their community, fund another music teacher for 3 years, and they'll win 10 grand. And then we have a school prize so the schools can compete. And the winner of the school prize will win a $25,000 grant. So all that's kind of fun. But, the main thing is raise awareness, and let's make sure that, before we're done here, every school has a music teacher.
You mentioned 4 million kids without a music teacher. Is there a villain, or is it simply that the budgets get cut and the music is first to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think I haven't talked to anybody who says, "Oh, music in the
Mhm.
school sucks." I think a lot of it is that, and the
Just not necessary is
Yeah.
what you get. I mean, that's unfortunately that's
yeah.
given the bare necessities, that's not one of them. Unfortunately, is the way it's looked at.
Well, I think some people look at that, but when you show them the metrics and you show them the graduation rates, you show them the social connectivity, you show that when you do have music and kids are able to express their voice in ways that they can't in any other situations, you see grades go up, you see graduations go up in math, in reading and writing, and the mental health of the kids um, gets much better. So I think when you explain that to people, they're like, "Oh, really? I didn't realize that this is not
Mm.
extracurricular. This is critical." And you're right. I think when you explain that to people, they get it. But I think most people understand that. And the schools that don't have the music teacher are usually the poorer schools in poor inner city areas. And so those are the kids who really need it most, because there's two ways to kind of escape some of the tragedies you see in these low income schools. One is
Mhm.
sports, right? Sports keeps you out of trouble. It gives you community. You sweat, you work out, you're too tired to go out, so you pass out that night. You learn structure, but not everybody's an athlete like Danny is, so it's like, so you need the arts is the other way to give people that kind of similar escape and community and purpose. So, that's my pitch.
And it's not a pitch, it's the truth. And it's also a place where they can, especially at that age, like, and not to talk about me too long, but like during the pandemic, my kid, I've had music instruments everywhere, all around, and both of my kids could have picked it up, not picked it up. During the pandemic, she was, I want to say 14 or 15. So she's having a lot of feelings, and that's where she learned how to play piano. She just sat at the piano, and that's where it all came out. That's where it all came out. That's how she sort of got all of it out, because it was really difficult for us to express. I can't even imagine when you have no connectivity as a 15-year-old girl.
Yes.
And so having watched that experience, just to have an outlet to express themselves, and it creates community. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about playing music together. It really does create community, and you don't even have to talk.
There was a girl in our class, and we would talk about how music matters, in their lives. And she had kind of a rocky relationship with her mom. Shock, teenage girl has,
As I was going to say, as
yeah,
teenage girls do,
yeah,
yeah.
teenage girl has a rocky relationship with mom. But they would kind of communicate through music. When they couldn't kind of sit down and have the heart to heart, they would maybe sit down and listen to some music together, and that would kind of give them an entryway to maybe talking about some things that were not easy to talk about. So yeah, and I do think the pandemic was illuminate a lot of things in the culture, especially for kids. And the tragedy that many of them couldn't go to school, they'll probably never recover from in some ways. But having music and those outlets, to kind of I had my little story about my violin player in my quartet. Of course, for professional musicians, the pandemic was not only kind of just economically a disaster because Broadway was closed. She couldn't make her money playing Broadway, but these string players have been playing every day since they were 5 years old, and they don't know what to do. So she actually got out her itinerary of shows she would be playing. I'm playing Moulin Rouge for these months. Then I'm going on tour with Five for Fighting. And then I have this session for playing the song. So every day she would just play that day's work. And that helped her get through the pandemic. And I remember the first gig we played after pandemic, not just her, but
She was sharp.
and also she cried like a
yeah.
baby. She cried like a baby. I mean, that's how much it means to folks. And I think that applies to kind of, everybody in whatever expression that they kind of use to kind of get out their feelings.
Here's why I personally think that music is so important in schools is because we haven't been teaching math for 1,000 years, but we have been teaching music. It's been passed down and passed down. And so if something has stood the test of time for so long, who are we to say, let's stop it here and kids can figure it out on their own?
Yeah, I was a math major actually, and if you look through history at a lot of these, iconic scientists, Einstein, whatever, many of them were musicians. Many of them played an instrument. So there is that correlation, and there's books about that and stuff. But there is that correlation between left brain, right brain, and as I said, it's if you want a full, well-rounded, young human, you certainly need math. You certainly need reading, writing, the basics. You certainly need that, and frankly, a lot of schools are not teaching that. But you have to have the arts, and you have to have the physical, the physical side of it, and so yeah, I'm with you, and hopefully this Music Matters Challenge will not only supply a teacher to a school, but more importantly, kind of let everybody have the conversations we're having right now, and and do what we can, because it's something that I think can be addressed, and something that I think a lot. And here's another nice thing about it: we live in this very polarized world, right? Tribal world. We can't agree on anything, and everybody's. It's like. We've talked to some folks on the Hill in Congress. Everybody digs this idea. Nobody's saying, "Oh, that's a bad political move for me to support
yeah,
music
who's
in
going
the
to stand up
schools,"
against that?
Yeah. So we'll see where it goes.
Oh, I can think of a couple. Go on.
Well, John, what's amazing too is that going back to your mom again, and you can also see the benefit that the mentors are getting out of it. You're clearly getting some joy out of this too.
Oh, so true. So true. I mean, as a parent, my daughter's kind of doing what I did, right? And the joy you see watching her do it is way more than you ever received. And as a teacher, watching these kids, kind of create things and see, in their lives what what it means to them. It keeps you young, it keeps you young. It gives you purpose.
Well, also part of why I think music education is so important. I don't see us throwing math books at kids and going, "Go ahead, start at lesson one
Figure it
and
out
let
on
us
your
know
own,
how you
right.
do it." Yeah. I mean, there's something to the basics of music and music theory and the experience and learning and progressing through, years long, decades long processes that help you improve and grow. And those things are really important. And that's, because that's what I noticed with my kid is she went to a school that had an incredible music program. And the difference between before she started taking music classes and after is like night and day. And I credit the teacher, but also just the experience of learning the basics and the fundamentals in order to grow yourself, I think is really, really important. It's not just creating a space where they can create, but also sending them on their way to either grow and learn how to play. I mean,
Well, and I'm not
that's
doubting
also
math at
hugely
all, but
important.
when my wife was pregnant with our kids, I didn't recite math equations through her belly. We played music. There you go.
Baby Einstein. Yeah.
John, one of the things I wanted to talk about, I know we're talking about music education here, but it seems like, and this touches on that, I think, is that you seem to be educating people in your songs these days in a way that you weren't in the past. You're writing about things that matter to you and matter to the world. Can you talk a little bit about that and how your viewpoint as an artist has changed?
I don't think educating is the right word. I mean, not to jump all over you here, Jason, but I just don't like. I watched the video for OK. I didn't feel like I was being educated. I felt like I was being
I
led.
feel like a lot of people are being educated.
No, but for me, it was just powerful, and I felt like I got to be witness to
Yeah.
something that I otherwise wouldn't be witness to.
Hopefully it's a little bit of both, it's a challenge for me because I've never been kind of the songwriter who stands on a soapbox and screams political messages and, tries to lecture people. I think throughout my career, you could see in my songs, I've one of my passions has been supporting the troops. There's a lot of songs about troops and freedom and how freedom matters. So I've kind of, I think that's been pretty clear, but I have a certain disdain for, and I shouldn't because it's free speech, but people who like to, stand on their soapbox and lecture us. But at the same time, in history, you see people write songs about significant historical events that are important. And you go back to the 60s and certainly listen to all the 60s songs. And you can see kind of the times in a different light when you hear that music.
When you hear that first chord from For What It's Worth, there's something happening here.
Exactly.
I mean, that is the 60s right there. Boom.
What's going on? I mean, all that stuff, you just listen to it and you're like, wow, what a time. There's some change going on. There's some problems. And for me, it actually started with Afghanistan. And again, a lot of this is my relationships with the troops. And I've met a lot of people, in the military and that do heroic work around the world. And I think we were all kind of shocked at the images we saw out of Afghanistan when we withdrew, babies being thrown over barbed wire, and it was horrific. And when we withdrew, it became personal for me. I had a friend she does this amazing work around the world, but she called me and she said, I need a contact. And I said, okay, why? And she says, well, I'm going down to Afghanistan to rescue our allies and our citizens. And I'm like, you're going to Afghanistan? And it made me very angry that the fact that we abandoned
she had to do
our
it.
citizens and these people that we swore we protect, there's people going down risking their lives. And so I started writing a little something then, but I had no really intent to put it out. But then when General Milley and General Austin came out and said, hey, what an extraordinary success this was, that scared me because I've always understood politicians are politicians, but the military, I've always expected to be the adults in the room. And when something's bad, they'll be honest with us. And when they did that, that scared me. And I wrote blood on my hands very quickly. Of course, everybody said you can't put it out. And I put it out anyways. And it became significant to many of our Afghan veterans who felt that they had been abandoned, felt shamed. And it gave them a sense of, okay, I'm not alone in this. People understand this. And it became something that I never thought it would.
So going back to the 60s, John, that feeling of, and my father spoke about this, who was drafted in Vietnam, that idea that you're kind of left behind, mentally, emotionally from the rest of the country, forgotten.
Yeah. I mean, of course, a lot of people were, and they still are, look, girls still can't go to school in Afghanistan. We still got 15 girls in Pakistan we're trying to get out. And I embedded with many of these groups. I started getting emails of people saying, I'm trapped, me. And so I started working with some folks on the Hill and some of these NGOs, and I met these heroes that would go drag people through sewers in the middle of the night, Green Berets to get them to the airport. And so I met these incredible heroes doing this heroic work. And then after that, I thought, okay, great. I never have to do one of those again. Thank God. And then Ukraine, and then here comes Zelensky. It's like, here's a plane ticket, leave the country. No, I'm going to stay here. Send me some stingers. And like, I hadn't seen that in generations. So I wrote a song about that. Come on, man, save the world. And went to Ukraine and filmed a video with Ukrainian orchestra at a blown up airport. And again, that one also kind of went viral and said something. And then I'm like, thank God I never have to do that again. And then, if you mentioned, here comes October 7th. And this one was different. It wasn't so much a visceral reaction. It, again, similar to 9/11, Afghanistan, the images were just horrific.
And you get to the point where you're saying to yourself, how can we as a society, as a species, top this? And then we, like you said, then it comes along again and it tops it again.
The different one on this one was the aftermath, the reaction. After Afghanistan, we didn't see 2,000 people celebrating in Times Square. After Ukraine, we didn't see our colleges turn into rampant, Russian supporters, So to me, what really the song was about was the aftermath and the collapse of our institutions in the media, certainly on our college campuses, on the Hill, Rashida Tlaib. And that also really scared me. And that's really what the song's about. It's, certainly the surface is Israel, Hamas, but what it really is civilization against those who want to tear it down. And this one, I was very careful. I spent weeks kind of listening to old classical funeral marches. I wanted the tone to be right, and I knew we had to have a video to go with it. And it took us 2 or 3 months to make that video.
It looks like it took 2 or 3 months to make that video. I mean, it's really, it looks like you did exhaustive research for just the right image.
The video was, frankly, more important than the song in a sense. I think because that's what people were going to see and react to. And to be honest with you guys too, I was ashamed of my own industry. I was ashamed of the music business. After 9/11, every living icon was at the concert for New York. Everybody was there. And as I was making this video, I'm like, where is everybody? Can you not at least say Hamas is evil and this is bad? Release the hostages? That's all I'm saying. You can talk about the history of Israel and Palestine. That's all fair game. But can you not say just come out and say, release the hostages, this is evil? And so that also kind of put a spur in, my bonnet and kind of pissed me off. And so that's why I wanted to make sure we got this video right, because I didn't want it to be an opinion. I don't want it to be here's my opinion. We don't need more opinions. Here's what happened. Here's images of what happened and what's going on. It's not my opinion. I'm not in the freaking video. And I think that's one reason why it's resonated kind of globally, and particularly, of course, with Israel and Jewish people. But I tell people, it's not a pro-Israel video. It's an anti-evil video. It's the most pro-Palestinian video you're going to see. The hero of this video is a Palestinian woman calling out Hamas for stealing the aid over the lyric, need every good woman, every good man, because there's no hope.
It's a humanity video.
Yes. It's humanity. There's no hope for Palestinians unless, you free Gaza from Hamas. So to me, I know that's can be a touchy subject, but I actually had a dinner last night with many kind of leaders from Ukraine, Jewish leaders, and people who work with Palestinian artists who are calling for change, which is an incredibly dangerous proposition these days. Those are truly heroic people that are brave enough to speak out, because the only solution to this is to change the culture of death. When you're taught at 5 years old that you have to, kill Jewish people to basically to find heaven, that's a generational problem. And it breaks your heart that these kids are raised that way, but it is what it is. And I just wish more of the music industry would have a little more moral clarity and speak up. There's some in Hollywood. I was Deborah Messing. I was with Mia Bialik. I was with the other night. Schwimmer. There are people in Hollywood. Not a lot, but at least some. The music business, crickets.
Yeah, do something with your talents, will you, John? For the love of God. I mean,
just take a nap,
sitting around in your house writing little piano tunes. We have a listener question that I wanted to run by you, which actually contradicts everything that I said. But it's a great one. Derek V asks you, my school has a music program, but it's really boring. It's also really out of date. How can schools make music programs interesting for those kids who love music and want to learn?
I get that. I get that. I remember when I went to SC for a couple years, and I wasn't studying music, but I took a music theory class, and and the teacher said, everybody bring in a piece of music tomorrow that we're going to analyze. And of course, being kind of USC and a kind of music theory class, all the other students brought in, Chopin, Rachmaninoff, Bach, and I brought in the score from The Wiz.
Oh,
And they're like,
nice.
"What the hell?" And I suffered through that
Crickets.
class. I think teachers get, you need to have some fun. Look, teach the basics, but you need to be singing songs they know. Sing artists they know. Let them collaborate. Don't make it methodical and just theory. Like, a lot of musicians can't read music, right? So it's about expanding your experience and engage the kids. And look, some teachers are better than others, but I agree. If you have a music teacher, and it's just, especially, look, if you go to college and you're major in music, you need to take those classes. But if you're in high school, middle school, music, the best thing you can do as a teacher is have them coming out there going, wow, that was fun, I want to come back tomorrow. And if you're not doing that, you're probably not serving your students.
Excellent way to put it. John Ondrasik, thank you so much for giving us some of your time.
What a joy talking to you, man, and the work that you do.
And the tour, where's it going? Where are you stopping? How
Oh yeah,
long?
thanks. Yeah, we're off next week. We're starting in Fargo, North Dakota. I've never
All
been to
right.
Fargo. March 26th, and then we're in the Midwest, and then I'm actually going to go to Israel for a week and do some stuff there. We'll have to come back in a few months. I got some things in the works that I'd love to tell you guys about.
Great.
And then we finish up our tour on the West Coast at the end of April, Washington, Oregon, back in SoCal. So all the dates are on fiveforfighting.com. I appreciate you guys mentioning that, and we will be playing the song "Okay," and also some that are a little more fun, a little more heartwarming.
Well, hopefully we will all be okay, John. I think that's the hope that everybody needs to have, is that, the next day is just going to get a little easier as opposed to what it has been, which seems to be a little bit more bleak, a little bit darker lately. But I hope we're going to be okay.
Me too.
Awesome. John, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Danny.
You know what? He's a courageous dude. I love what he did. Did you see that video, man? It was like it hurt me. It was hard to watch. It was hard to watch. It was good to watch. The song is terrific, but I gotta say, it brought up feelings that I was not ready to have when I was watching it.
Well, and it gives you that warning before you watch the video. For those who want to check it out, it's on his website. It's on YouTube. The song's called "Okay," and it lets you know that you're going to see some heavy stuff before you start listening.
It's just so, humanity can be so fucking disappointing, Jason.
Sure can.
It's a horrible thing to say, but it really can sometimes.
But then there's guys like John who make it feel better, don't it?
Who find a way to improve his world and the world around him using his talent and his wherewithal. And I really felt like, I don't know, man. Like I became a better person just talking to him through osmosis.
Agreed. I'm just bummed out that we all have to go back to work for that factory to get that one resource for the rest of the world. That's a callback.
Well, this was great. What a talent he is, and really appreciated talking to him. And thank you all for listening.
Music by Denny Nucci. Produced and edited by the same two people you heard hosting this show, because they have no friends.